If you didn't watch my last video, my hair is pink now. It's been a few washes, so it's not as bright. If you want to see it in its full colorful effect, watch my last video. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Allie. If you're new here, hello. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you for being here. We're in my bedroom for once because it is New York and it gets dark very early and I'm working overtime. So recording in my living room means I have no light. So we're in the bedroom with the LEDs, but honestly, it's not bad. It is the end of January, which feels very weird to say. It's the beginning of 2023, so it is our first monthly reading wrap up of the year. I read 13 books this month. My overall goal for the year is 150 books, so according to Goodreads I'm one book ahead of schedule, so like we're not doing bad. So I read 13 books this month, so let's get into it. My first book was a reread. I started reading ACOTAR again, and by I mean starting, I read the first book. I don't know why I only read the first book, but I read the first book again. I got into other stuff and then didn't get back to it. And even though I have a million things on my TBR, I decided to reread a series. But yeah, I read the first book in ACOTAR. I read the first book of ACOTAR again, and it's still like a 4-star. Still like good, but not my favorite of the series. So then my next 2 or 3-ish are in one of my previous videos, my part 2 of Enemies to Lovers for fantasy. But the next book I read was 1,000 Heartbeats by Kira Cass. I 4-starred this, loved this. This would have been a 5-star for middle school me. Author that wrote the Selection series. I'm a big Selection girly. I was in love with this book. Again, it's Enemies to Lovers YA, so not spicy or anything. There's like a kiss scene. It has YA, like forced proximity, one bed trope type thing. This follows our 2 main characters, Annika and Lennox. Annika is the princess of the current reigning kingdom, and Lennox is, as you find out, a prince to a country that was previously taken over. So Lennox and his people are trying to overthrow Annika's kingdom to reclaim their throne that Annika's kingdom stole from them. Dueling sides of a warish type thing. One day they capture Annika and try to like use her as ransom and everything, to which kind of a cat and mouse love situation comes between her and Lennox. If you are a Selection girl, if you love yourself a good middle school YA, I really think you'd like this, but like, it's not bad middle school. It has kind of cool Prince vibes where it focuses a lot on like the democracy of their kingdom, but it's very good and I highly, highly suggest it. It was one of my favorite reads of the month. So then following up with that, a book that I ended up DNFing is Blood and Moonlight by Erin Beatty. I only read like 100 pages of this and it just wasn't for me. It's like a fantasy thriller. It's like a murder mystery with fantasy aspects, but right out of the gate, I was confused. I didn't really understand the world building and the whole powers thing. It was confusing to me. It was like fantasy, but also like the 1800s. So I was just confused on how everything meshed together, and so I DNF'd it. But yeah, that was a thing that happened for a minute. And right off that DNF, I went into my first and only 5-star of the month, which was These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. I was not expecting this to be a 5-star in anyway. Again, this is YA fantasy. A little bit of ACOTAR vibes, kind of, but not. A little bit of like Cruel Princey vibes, kind of, but not. This is like fantasy love triangle. I'm definitely still interested in reading the rest of the series. I just haven't bought it and gotten to it yet. Our main character, Bree, she lives in poverty with her sister. She is kind of in like a Cinderella situation where she lives with like the evil stepmom, step-aunt situation and has to go like hunt and sell things to help pay room and board for her and her sister, which she is very behind on paying, and one day her sister gets sold into slavery and she's trying to get her back. Right before her sister gets sold for money, they were planning on going to this fae ball because the fae prince is going to marry a human to like human fae bonds, mesh them together, whatever. So they were like, hey, what if we go to this ball thing and he chooses to marry one of us? Like, boom, we're rich. That takes care of our money situation. But obviously she then gets stolen, to where Bree finds out one of her childhood best friends is not who she thinks he is, and she ends up in the Fae Kingdom, and there's 2 different Fae love interests, and yada yada yada. I loved this. I devoured this book in like a day. YA, ACOTAR-ish, adjacent, maybe, kind of, sort of. Yeah. So this is where my month took a little bit of a turn to like school, in a way. I was reading more solely for educational purposes than reading for fun. So this is just kind of like a very niche section. I read 3 different tarot books. I'm getting back into tarot. I have a friend who is Wiccan and did tarot all in college, and like I knew basics, but I hadn't done it for myself in forever, so I wanted to get back into it. So I bought and read 3 different tarot books. So the first one I read, The Fictional Key to Tarot by Arthur Edward Waite, is like the OG tarot book. I gave it 3 stars because like it does have some informational stuff, but it's also written in Old English. It's very wordy. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading Shakespeare. Not the most helpful in modern day, but I did read it. And then I read How to Read Tarot, a Practical Guide, which I have tabbed and highlighted the heck out of. This one was definitely a lot more helpful. And then the Modern Witchcraft Guide to Tarot. This one was my favorite. I think I've 4-starred both of these, but this one is the most useful for me because this one has a lot more, like, if you're already somebody who practices witchcraft and are like super established in that, how to add it to that, which I'm not. But you are somebody that wants to get into tarot. Here are 3 readings for you. I suggest these 2 more over this one. This one's more just like Old Englishy, hear ye, hear ye. Tarot, I suggest these 2 specifically. They were great. I picked up a new hobby for the new year, apparently. So off of my tarot kick and back into normal reading, I read Surfin' and Dove by Shelby Mahurin? That's what I think. I don't know. This was a 3-star for me. It was okay, but I did feel like it was like kind of slow and dragged on for me sometimes. I don't necessarily know if this is a series that I'm gonna keep reading. I read it and I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it. This took me multiple days to finish, whereas something like These Hollow Boughs, I plowed right through it. This is enemies to lovers with the witch and a witch hunter, and it's just like very church-centered, which is like fine, but not super my vibe, and I don't know. I just felt like this book could be 100 pages shorter and it wouldn't have made a difference. I wanted there to be more chemistry and more banter than what there was. It's very grumpy sunshine, but like just it doesn't not be grumpy, and I don't know. I wanted more than what it gave me. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting to be a lot more YA than what it was. This isn't necessarily spicy, but it felt just more like dense and new adulty. But it is witch and witch hunter. Lou is a witch that has broken off from her coven and is basically just trying to live in the lives of normal people. And Reed is like a monk-ish, Catholic-y church guy who is a witch hunter. They meet accidentally and are forced into a marriage without Reed knowing that she's a witch, so Lou is trying to convince him that witches aren't bad so he doesn't kill him while they're also falling in love. It's okay. Not my most suggested book, but if it seems like something that you'd be interested in, go for it. Next, I read Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. I can never say this name right. I 4-starred this. Again, YA fantasy. I had a very YA fantasy filled month. Loved this one. Again, it wasn't what I was expecting, but in a good way, whereas Surfin' and Dove was not what I was expecting in a not so great way. But this, again, enemies to lovers, YA, so it's not really spicy. There's a little bit of a kissy smoochy scene, but this follows our main character Tess. She lives in one of the more like poor, poverty stricken parts of this kingdom she lives in. This entire kingdom is being swept by this plague, and the only cure is made from this certain plant, which is of course rationed throughout the kingdom. And like most things, the poorer factions of this kingdom don't get as much of this plant as the rest of them do, so their community is dying at a faster rate. So Tess and one of her friends become smugglers. They go into the higher class areas and steal them and make tonics and stuff for the poorer communities, which is super illegal. So they do it at night with masks and yada yada yada. So she and her partner have never seen each other's real faces. They don't need each other's real names. And one day she realizes that her partner has been killed, and she, in like a fit of rage, like sneaks herself into the castle, not really knowing what she wants to accomplish by doing that, but she does it, to where she of course gets caught by the prince, who is basically their head of torture and like super mean, and everybody's like, blah, he's angry. And they meet, and hence enemies to lovers. She finds out he's not who he really says he is, and trading and blah blah blah. It's great. I love it. I will definitely read the second one once I get my hands on it. So then, if you watched my last video of my Fairy Loot unboxing, I read Kingdom of the Feared by Carrie Maniscalco. 3-starred this one. This one definitely had smut and it was great. Definitely aged itself up more than the other two. I just feel like sometimes the world building and the plot was just a little messy. I felt like sometimes there was a lot of stuff going on that didn't really need to. Like overall, I recommend the series as a whole. This book is probably my least favorite, which is weird because it has the most smut. Overarchingly, this is an enemies to lovers series with witches and demons and magic and all that. Seven deadly sins. There is a betrayal of twin sisters, a possible murder, all of that jazz. Overall, I definitely suggest the series, but I was just expecting more from this book than what it gave, I guess. So then, taking a break from fantasy, my last two books I read were romance. So the first book I read was Indigo Ridge by Deveni Perry. This is the first book in the Eden series. I read the prequel, like the 0.5 book, in my Christmas book recommendations because they had a Christmas themed opener or whatever. I 4-starred this book. Wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting from this book, but it was good. I liked it. Did I want a little bit more from it? Yes, but it's a small book and I think it did what it needed to do. I definitely want to continue the series, but overall this is a 4.5, 5-ish book series. It is companion novel, I think. I haven't read the second one. I think it's companion novel and doesn't just follow the same couple, but I could be wrong. I will let you know when I read the next book. But this one specifically follows Winslow. She is the new chief of police in this small town that her grandfather works in. She was raised by her grandfather. She comes to this town and meets a local man, hooks up with him, and then realizes a couple days later that his family is the people that like founded the town and like own everything. So she's like, whoa, that's weird. And then gets called to a murder scene, and then she realizes that a bunch of other unalivings have happened here, and she's like, hey, this seems weird, and starts investigating it and digging up town secrets while also being in a weird situationship with the founder of the town that doesn't want to believe that what she's saying is right, and yada yada yada. So like there was a lot more of like the whodunitness to this book than I was expecting, but I liked it. I had a plot twist that I did not see coming and like definitely just kind of like came out of nowhere and really went to 0 to 100 real quick, which was something I was like, whoa, chill. I like the series and I definitely think I will continue reading it. And then finally, my last book of the month and probably my most random, I read There's Something About Mary by Cody Hall. I read it at the end of January and I 3-starred it. It was good, but it was third person. I'm not a big third person anymore. Sometimes like the writing style for third person just drags for me, and that's what this was. I liked it. I just would have liked it better if it was first person and not third person. This follows our main character, Mary. She is trying to prove to her parents that she has what it takes to run their Christmas tree farm, and she's also just on dating apps perusing where she meets the main love interest, and he kind of like helps convince her that she can run this Christmas tree farm. It has the trope of like meeting a person in real life and online and not knowing that they're the same person. Single dad, small towns, loved it. Just wish it was not third person. I lied. I read one more. That was the only Kindle book I read this year. The only Kindle book I read this month was A Long Time Coming. This is the third book in a companion novel series. The first two are Not So Meant to Be and So Not Meant to Be. I 4-starred this book. I love this series, this companion novel series. It is one of my absolute favorites. Like always, it has good smut and good plot. This one specifically is a friends to lovers situation. The first one is marriage of convenience, fake dating, and the second one is like workplace enemies to lovers. I love all three of these books. If you're looking for a really good companion novel series with good smut and good plot, I highly, highly, highly suggest this one. It is one of my favorites. Yeah, these were all the books that I read this month. I'm gonna drop this pile. These are all the books that I read this month. This is the most books that I've read in a while. I definitely could have read more, but as per my last video, I had a mental breakdown and haven't been doing much reading. I did read 13 books, which I, in hindsight, am proud of myself for. Happy end of January. Happy start to the new year. Hopefully I gave you guys some new recs. If you want to follow me anywhere on my social medias, they are down below as always, and on my like end card screen description where all the normal things are. Down below is also my PangoBooks. If you want to buy mine or other people's used books, a lot of the stuff that I DNF'd are on there. I've bought from PangoBooks millions of times. I have entire series from there. It's a great place to get books for a cheaper price. Down below is also my Amazon wish list. If you want to send me anything that is on there, you can also add your own books to it and send me like your favorite books specifically that you want me to read. Yeah, happy end of January. It's wild that it's February already. But yeah, have a good year. I love you. Please stay safe, and I will see you somewhere else on the internet.